Hello everyone, welcome once again to Reading Culture. Today we are going to take up another short poem, which is perhaps a little bit unexpected in a series on heroism, and perhaps by an unexpected author. If you are familiar with the author Lewis Carroll, it is almost assuredly through his most famous work, or works, which is namely Alice in Wonderland and its sequel. So Lewis Carroll was born Charles Ludwig Dodson. Right? Lewis Carroll is a pseudonym. He was born in 1832. Highly educated, he was educated at Christ Church, Oxford, where he would later teach mathematics. Despite being a teacher in mathematics, it is as an author that he truly has retained his fame. So he wrote Alice's Adventures in Wonderland in 1866, by far his most famous work, although the sequel is essentially as famous, titled Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There, published in 1871. So this genre is often known as nonsense. That is to say that it's dealing with subjects and situations which are, highly whimsical, often lacking in what we would consider to be regular logic, and using language particularly, which is, at least at the outset, seems nonsensical. The particular thing that we are going to look at today is the poem Jabberwocky, which is considered a nonsense poem, which is not to say that we can't make anything out of it, but it's using language in such a way that it is disguising, to an extent at least, what is being said. So what is the context of the poem Jabberwocky? Well, most immediately, the context is the sequel to Alice in Wonderland, namely Through the Looking Glass. So within that story, we have Alice journeying into a back-to-front world, right? A world where everything is reversed. It's a world of inversion. And we need to keep that in mind when we think about what this particular poem is doing. So in an early scene in which she first encounters a book that is written in an unintelligible language, right? So she can't figure it out. It doesn't seem to make any sense, right? She has this premonition. She realizes that, well, if I'm in a world that's inverted, right, that's back to front, then maybe the writing in the book is also backwards. So she looks, it's mirror writing, and she holds it up to a mirror, and she realizes that she can read this poem, Jabberwocky. So that's one aspect of the inversion. However, when she actually gets to the poem itself, it's really just as inverted, or at least it seems like it, as it was before she looked at it in the mirror. That's to say, she still can't make heads or tails out of it. And remember, she's in a dream land here. It's not necessarily representative of reality, but there's going to be something that we can really attach onto here. So the first thing that you will notice, of course, is the language. It is, again, seemingly nonsensical, although you may notice certain words that are familiar to you, such as chortle. You may have heard that before, even though that was in fact coined here in Jabberwocky by Carroll. It may be possible that even not knowing most of the words in the poem, that you actually may be able to get a sense of the narrative. Why? Well, that's because there are certain things going on in terms of how he's using language to actually construct a narrative that we can piece out, even if we are unable to actually define many of the words in the poem. So I'm going to read the poem here for you and give you a sense of precisely how nonsensical it is. So this is Jabberwocky. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave. All mimsy where the borough grows, and the mome raths outgrave. Beware the Jabberwock, my son, the jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Beware the Jubjub bird, and shun the fruinous Bandersnatch. He took his vorpal sword in hand, long time the manxome foe he sought, So rested he by the tum-tum tree, and stood a while in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, the Jabberwock with eyes of flame came whiffling through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. 1, 2, and through the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. He left it dead, and with its head he went galumphing back. And hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O Fabius Day, Callooh, Callay, he chortled in his joy. 'Twas brillig, and the slithy toves did gyre and gimble in the wave, all mimsy where the burrow grows, and the momeraths outgrabe. All right, so you may have been able to kind of get a sense of what's going on. Let's actually break this down, and let's see what we can do. We actually have a bit of a key for a lot of these words, but let's not rely on it for the moment. Let's actually just come to this as though for the first time, which it very well may be, and try and see how we can possibly parse out what's going on. So 'twas brillig and the slithy toves. Okay, well, we don't really know. We know that, okay, it was, that's the right contraction for it was, so it was brillig, so something was brillig, so it's an adjective, but we don't know what. And the slithy toves, right, slithy is clearly functioning as an adjective, modifying toves, but again, what those are. Well, whatever they are, they're gyring and gimbling in the wave. Now, gyre kind of looks like, right, we can think of like a gyroscope. So maybe a turning sound, gimbal, right, this may be less clear as is wave. But okay, let's go on to the next. All mimsy where the burrow grows. Again, adjective, mimsy, noun, burrow grows, but we don't know what those are. And the momeraths outgrabe. Well, there we're really lost, right? There's not much that we can take out of that. So at this point, you might be thinking, all right, I'm not going to be able to make heads or tails of this. But once we get to the next stanza, we may see that the meaning of the poem is going to be a little bit more evident, even though this nonsense language is going to continue. Beware the Jabberwock, my son. So we don't know what the Jabberwock is, but it's something you need to beware of. The jaws that bite, the claws that catch. Okay, it has jaws and it has claws, so we know it's dangerous. Beware the Jub bird and shun the fruminous bandersnatch. And we find, right, some other things to avoid. Jub bird, whatever that is, and the fruminous bandersnatch. So these appear to be a list of creatures of some kind, right, that are dangerous. So beware the Jabberwock, my son. We can assume it's a father speaking to a son, right? Assumedly a boy or a young man, and right, telling him to avoid this. He, right, that's going to be the young person here, it seems, took his vorpal sword in hand. So again, we don't know what a vorpal sword is, but it's a sword. We've got something. Long time the maxim foe he sought. Again, maxim, what does that mean? Well, he's seeking at least his foe. We know that that's the bandersnatch. So rested by the tum-tum tree, or he's resting by a tree, right, whatever a tum-tum tree might be, and he stands a while in thought. And as in uffish thought he stood, again, whatever that means, he's still standing in thought, the Jabberwock with eyes of flame, so whatever it is, again, it has flaming eyes, came whiffling through the tulgey wood. We can get a sense, perhaps, when we just say it out loud, whiffling through the tulgey wood, and burbled as it came. Again, it kind of sounds like gurgled or something like that. 1, 2, 1, 2, and through the vorpal blade went snicker-snack. Right, so they have some kind of onomatopoeic language here. There's a sense that, right, he's slashing with his blade. He left it dead, that's the Jabberwock, and with his head he went galumphing back. Again, you can maybe get a sense of this by hearing it out loud, what galumphing might mean. But the point is that this dangerous creature with claws and jaws and eyes of flame has been vanquished, right? It has had its head cut off by the vorpal blade. And then the next stanza, hast thou slain the Jabberwock? Come to my arms, my beamish boy. O Fabius Day, Callooh, Callay. Again, these appear to just be kind of interjections, but we get a sense, right? He chortled in his joy. Again, right? Chortled has actually entered the English language. So this is obviously the father receiving back the boy who has slain the Jabberwock and is very happy. And then we get this refrain, 'twas brillig in the slithy toves of gyre and gimble in the wave, all mimsy where the burrow grows and the momeraths outgrabe. All right, so again, just going through it like that, we can actually get a fairly solid sense of what is going on. We actually have the narrative, right? We have a young boy being warned about the dangers of the Jabberwock by his father. He nevertheless goes out with his sword, encounters it in the wood, beheads it, brings its head back, and is wonderfully reunited with his father. So a very simple story, but one that is impeded, it seems, in terms of the meaning by all of these words. But the words are doing something. Now, we can maybe get a sense of the context So if we actually look at the novel itself, following this, we have this following passage. "It seems very pretty," she said, this is Alice speaking, when she had finished it, "but it's rather hard to understand." You see, she didn't like to confess, even to herself, that she couldn't make it out at all. "Somehow it seems to fill my head with ideas, only I don't exactly know what they are. However, somebody killed something. That's clear at any rate." Right. So we already are getting a sense of how Alice reacts to it, and that may very well be how we react too. Well, it's clear that somebody killed something, right? But what? We don't quite know. But there's something about the way it's constructed that right, might be kind of filling your heads with ideas, namely of, perhaps, dare I say it, dragon slayers. All right. So a little bit later in Through the Looking Glass, we have this encounter where Alice is actually going to have described for her in a rather humorous scene with Humpty Dumpty what some of these words mean. "You seem very clever at explaining words, sir," said Alice. She's speaking to Humpty Dumpty here. "Would you kindly tell me the meaning of the poem called Jabberwocky?" "Let's hear it," said Humpty Dumpty. "I can explain all the poems that ever were invented, and a good many that haven't been invented just yet." This sounded very hopeful, so Alice repeated the first verse. "'Twas brillig and the slithy toes did gyre and gimble on the wave. All mimsy were the borogoves and the mome raths outgrave." "That's enough to begin with," Humpty Dumpty interrupted. "There are plenty of hard words there. Brillig means 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the time when you begin broiling things for dinner." "That'll do very well," said Alice. "And slithy?" "Well, slithy means lithe and slimy. Lithe is the same as active. You see, it's like a portmanteau. There are 2 meanings packed up into one word." "I see it now," Alice remarked thoughtfully. "And what are toes?" "Well, toes are something like badgers. There's something like lizards, and there's something like corkscrews. They must be very curious-looking creatures." "They are that," said Humpty Dumpty. "Also, they make their nests under sundials. Also, they live on cheese." "And what's to gyre and to gimble?" "To gyre is to go round and round like a gyroscope. To gimble is to make a hole like a gimlet." "And the wabe is the grass plot round a sundial, I suppose," said Alice, surprised at her own ingenuity. "Of course it is. It's called wabe, you know, because it goes a long way before it, and a long way behind it, and a long way beyond it on each side," added Alice. "Exactly so. Well then, mimsy is flimsy and miserable. There's another portmanteau for you. And a borough is a thin, shabby-looking bird with its feathers sticking out all round, something like a live moth." "And then mome raths," said Alice. "I'm afraid of giving you a great deal of trouble." "Well, a rath is a sort of green pig, but mome I'm not certain about. I think it's short for from home, meaning that they lost their way, you know." "And what does outgrabe mean?" "Well, outgribing is something between bellowing and whistling, with a kind of sneeze in the middle. However, you'll hear it done maybe, down in the wood yonder. When you've heard it, you'll be quite content. Who's been repeating all that hard stuff to you?" So in that passage, we get a description, right? We get a description of what these words could mean, according to Humpty Dumpty. Whether or not he can be trusted is another matter. But we see, perhaps, in Carroll providing meaning for these words, after we've already absorbed the poem, not understanding most of the words in it, how we can kind of puzzle through what's really a very simple story, right? But in which language is being deployed in a very kind of eccentric way. It also might be worth taking into account the potential thing that he is making fun of. So it seems that this comes from originally a little poem that encompasses the first stanza that was made for a periodical that he wrote and illustrated simply for his family. And the piece was originally titled "A Stanza of Anglo-Saxon Poetry." So in this time period, Anglo-Saxon poetry, that is the study of the poetry of English around the year 1000, was very much coming to the fore. Now, the English of that period, known as Old English, is very different from modern English. Indeed, it could be as foreign to read, or even more so, than the nonsense that Carroll wrote. And it seems like he's having fun with this, right? He's having fun with this idea.